In the summer of 1975, the red light of the Red Lantern Diner still flickered as Elena Morales, a 21-year-old waitress, left her final shift and stepped into the sweltering Bakersfield night. 2 hours later, she vanished. No accident, no witnesses, no trace. 2 years later, farmers discovered the body of a young woman wrapped in oilcloth at the edge of an abandoned oil field, but her identity was never determined. She was buried as Jane Doe number 47 Farads, becoming a cold marker in Kern County's archives for nearly half a century. Then, almost 50 years later, when an investigative team reopened the old file, the scraps of cloth, strands of rope, and a seemingly decayed radio tape began to tell the real story of a night, a patrol car, and a man wearing a Bakersfield police badge. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest cases. Bakersfield, summer of 1975. The air hung heavy with the smell of crude oil, the dry wind whipping through the black iron pump jacks that creaked under the yellow glow of streetlights. The shops along the highway had closed early, leaving only the neon sign of the Red Lantern Diner flickering with blurry red light in the dusty heat. Elena Morales, 21, wiped her hands on her worn apron, counted her tips, and tucked them into a small cloth bag. She took off her uniform, threw a thin jacket over her shoulders, said goodbye to the cook cleaning the counter, and stepped outside. The heat rising from the pavement made the air thick, the wind carrying the scent of gasoline and metal through the roadside trees. The street was quiet, with only a few trucks parked outside bars where the music had stopped. Elena walked toward her boarding house nearby, where she rented a small second-floor room in an old wooden building for night shift workers. She often walked home along this familiar route. No one thought anything of it. A few people saw her turn back to wave, her slight figure fading into the dim light. Then she disappeared behind the trees, blending into the creak of oil pumps and the whistle of wind across the open fields. Bakersfield's night drifted on, with only the oil field lights blinking like eyes peering into the darkness. When the sun rose, the boarding house stirred, but room 6's door stayed shut. The bed was neatly made, clothes folded, unwashed uniform still there, shoes aligned under the table. No sign she'd returned that night. By noon, her family grew worried, searching alleys, diners, friends' houses. They asked neighbors, the diner manager, but everyone shook their heads. No one had seen Elena since she left the diner the previous evening. The silence of the parched land grew thick, heavy, pressing on the chests of her loved ones. As the afternoon sun scorched the pavement, a chill ran down their spines when they returned to the boarding house. No trace, no note, no clue of where she'd gone. Finally, her younger sister walked into the Bakersfield police station, hands trembling, voice hoarse from thirst and fear. She placed her sister's photo on the desk, eyes welling. My sister would never leave without a word. The officer nodded, pulled out a form, and began writing the first lines of a missing person report. The next morning, Bakersfield awoke to police loudspeakers echoing through the low-rise neighborhoods. A patrol car crawled along Union Avenue, the speaker repeating the description: female, brown hair, about 5'3", last seen leaving the Red Lantern Diner on Tuesday night. On the sidewalks, people watched quietly. Some nodded, others shook their heads. Elena Morales' name sounded unfamiliar, but disappearances in Bakersfield weren't new. This oil and farm town had swallowed others like this. Only this time the search began faster than usual. Police cordoned off the highway stretch, divided the area into grid squares on a map, and mobilized local rescue teams, oil workers, and student volunteers from Bakersfield College. They moved in lines, wading through dry ditches, scraping cracked earth for anything unusual. A helicopter circled above, kicking up swirls of yellow dust that blurred the view. The loudspeaker mixed with the wind and the drone of oil pumps. The temperature climbed, the sharp smell of oil rising from the ground, sticking in throats and leaving everyone parched. At Elena's boarding house, police searched her room. Everything untouched, clothes folded, no missing papers or belongings. They noted every detail, photographed every corner, but nothing hinted at her destination. The only witness, A car wash owner across the street vaguely recalled seeing a young woman walking along the highway, maybe that night, but he wasn't sure. As night fell, police car lights swept red and blue around the oil fields. Curious residents gathered along metal fences, whispering. An older woman said softly, "In this area, if you go missing at night, you rarely come back." On the second night, the search shifted north to a canal running parallel to the train tracks. Flashlights scanned the water's glinting surface, revealing only dark fabric scraps caught in the grass. When pulled up, they were slick with oil and mud, impossible to identify as clothing or burlap. A grayish-white handkerchief was found a few meters away, its edges frayed, no embroidery or writing. All evidence was bagged, labeled, numbered, and sent to the lab, but no one held much hope. By the third day, the search expanded to a truck yard and empty lots where drivers rested overnight. Footprints, tire marks, and mud were churned by hundreds of vehicles, making tracking nearly impossible. Another helicopter flew for 3 hours in the heat, seeing only tiny figures in the vast land. The longer they searched, the more hope evaporated like heat from the pavement. By afternoon, only a few volunteers remained, eyes stinging from dust, shirts soaked with sweat. The police chief leaned against his car, staring at a map spread on the hood, red pins marking every search spot. "No trace, no witnesses, no direction," he muttered. A young officer added, "Maybe she left town." No one believed it. As darkness fell, they packed up, turned off the lights, leaving only a few torches flickering in the wind. Far off, oil pumps kept their rhythm, metal clanking with crickets, as if the town was used to burying secrets under its oily soil. The first search ended after 3 days. The report stated, "No victim or identifiable evidence found. Case temporarily filed under missing adult." At the station, the report was pinned to a board among dozens of others. Outside, Bakersfield's night returned to its usual silence, a young woman gone, and no one knew why. 3 weeks after Elena Morales vanished, Bakersfield slipped back into its routine. Posters taped to lampposts faded, her portrait blurring under the harsh Sunday. People still stopped by the Red Lantern Diner each morning, where a new waitress now worked Elena's old table. The disappearance was mentioned sparingly over coffee, with half-believed theories. Maybe she ran off with a boyfriend, or probably got tired of this town and left. The local paper ran a brief story, buried on page 3. 1-year-old woman missing after night shift. Police say she may have left town voluntarily. No mention of the search, the oily fabric scraps, or the handkerchief. The article ended simply, "Investigation ongoing." But in internal files, the final typewritten note read, "Case suspended, no foul play indicated." In reality, the search stopped after 21 days. The police chief deemed the cost and manpower unsustainable without evidence of a crime. The oil field search area was returned to the drilling company, caution tape torn by wind and tangled in dry grass. Volunteers left, though a few of Elena's relatives lingered around the boarding house, hoping for a small clue, a note, an item, someone who saw her on the highway. Nothing. Room 6 was locked, the key returned to the landlord. Inside, everything remained as it was, except for dust settling on the table and a small framed photo by the bed. At the police station, the case file was less than an inch thick. A stack of reports, a few crime scene photos, a list of 12 interviewed people, and the conclusion: no witnesses saw Elena Morales after leaving the diner. No signs of a struggle, no physical evidence, no suspects. The lead investigator, Roy Benson, moved to another case and never mentioned it again. To him, it was just another adult missing in a highway town, where workers and drivers came and went, faces forgotten. In the following weeks, the Morales family kept searching, printing flyers with their savings, asking the local radio to broadcast notices. No one called back. No accidents were reported. No hospitals had unidentified patients matching her description. By mid-September, as golden sunlight flooded the valley, they had to accept she was beyond reach. Bakersfield returned to its industrial rhythm, drilling rigs, oil trucks, and long, smoky evenings. In the Kern County Sheriff's Department archive, Case file MP75184 was shelved under closed pending leads. A red stamp on the cover read, "Missing adult, presumed voluntary departure." No one imagined that thin file would sit untouched for nearly half a century, only reopened when the old oil fields faded, and memories of the young woman blurred in the town's mind. Time quietly erased what remained. The dark fabric scraps and unmarked handkerchief were stored in the evidence room, loosely labeled, unsealed. The received by field on the evidence log was blank. They didn't know those small, seemingly meaningless items were the only links left to the night Elena walked away under Bakersfield's blurry red lights. For now, to the police and the town, the case was closed, vague, silent, forgotten like a name that never existed. In September 1977, the land north of Bakersfield cracked dry after a long summer. An old oil field, abandoned since the early decade, stood with rusted pump jacks and empty tanks. One afternoon, as shadows lengthened, a farmer named Harold Pierce drove his tractor to a plot near the field to widen an irrigation ditch. The blade hit something and stopped. He climbed down and saw something white-gray protruding from the churned dirt. At first, he thought it was animal bones common in an area mixed with industrial waste, but as he leaned closer, the smooth, rounded shape of a joint made him step back. A damp, decayed smell rose from the soil, old and heavy, like a breath held too long. Pierce ran back to his farm and called Kern County police. When the forensic team arrived, it was dark, their headlights casting dim halos over the field. The site was a shallow pit, less than half a meter deep, with scattered bone fragments and dark brown cloth. Part of a skull remained intact, others were cracked and faded by time. No sign of a proper burial, just a hasty cover of dirt. They marked each spot, numbered stakes, and collected surrounding soil and items. Under the lights, the cloth gave off a sharp oil smell. A technician noted it might be industrial oilcloth, the thick, waterproof kind used to cover equipment. Beneath it, they found a few white plastic buttons and a rusted metal clasp. No ID, no wallet, no identifying marks. At the Kern County Coroner's Office, the bones were cleaned and arranged into a human form. Initial findings: female, aged 20-25, about 5'3". Time of death estimated at 2 years, around mid-1975. No clear signs of violence due to complete tissue decay, though a small worn notch on a cervical vertebra prompted a note: possible strong pressure or pull. No bullet marks, no fractured long bones. On the work table, photos of each bone, cloth scrap, and button were organized into a new file. The chief coroner, Dr. Harold Goodman, asked the team, "Any missing person reports from that time?" The answer was no. From 1975 to 1977, Bakersfield logged over 20 missing persons, mostly male oil workers or drivers. Female cases were either resolved or never found. The only close match was Elena Morales' file, but no dental records existed for comparison. Per protocol, the case was labeled unidentified remains. 3 weeks later, the final report was done. The first line read, "Remains located near Kern River Field. Female, age estimated 20-25. Time of death, approximately 2 years prior." The last, no identification. Cause of death, undetermined. The nameless woman was coded Jane Doe number 47 Farrads. On October 12, at Greenlawn Cemetery, a simple wooden coffin was lowered into a small plot on the western side, among other unmarked graves. A priest read a brief prayer, then 2 cemetery workers filled the grave and set a metal plaque. Unidentified female, found September 1977. No family, no flowers, just a few forensic staff as witnesses. On the police car, the completed file was tucked into a brown leather bag, ready for the office. They didn't know it contained a handwritten note in the corner. Possible correlation to MP75184, Morales, E. As dusk fell, Bakersfield's sunlight turned the fields golden, dry wind carrying dust past the old pump jacks. No one noticed the new grave among the row of nameless markers. To the town, She was just an unknown woman, long dead. But in the police files, number 47 Farad sat silently among hundreds of unsolved cases, waiting for someone, decades later, to reopen the yellowed pages and realize it all began on a stifling August night in 1975, when a young woman left a diner by the highway and vanished into Bakersfield's darkness. The Jane Doe number 47 Farad's file was brought to the Kern County Sheriff's Department on a dusty December morning in 1977, barely half an inch thick. It was bound in brown cardboard, containing a few black and white photos, bone analysis, and typed evidence logs. The first page noted, recovered items, one section of petroleum tarp, one rope segment approximately 1.2 meters, multiple textile fragments. No one in the investigation saw these as key clues. Oilcloth and rope were common in Bakersfield's oil fields, as anonymous as the woman herself. Chemical testing was too costly then, and the further analysis required box was crossed out in red ink, case closed. The evidence was moved to the county's storage, sealed in thick nylon bags, labeled Evidence Case 47 Farads. A rookie officer misstated the seal. The recipient's signature was a hasty, barely legible scrawl. The tag reading, to be held pending identification, faded over time. The case's officers moved on, and soon number 47 Farads was just a minor entry in the unidentified remains log. In the coroner's office, a gray metal cabinet held unnamed case files. In the third drawer from the bottom, among dozens of numbered folders, 47 Farads sat between 42 C and 49 amperes. No one touched it. Dr. Goodman, who led the analysis, died of a heart attack the next year. His assistant transferred to Fresno. The file was handed off cleanly, no questions asked. The case was officially closed with a red stamp. Unidentified female remains. No further action. Time marched on. Bakersfield's oil fields changed hands. Many leveled for processing plants. The site of the remains was filled in, grass covering the traces. At Green Lawn Cemetery, the metal plaque by the grave began to rust. Years later, it was replaced to preserve the case number. No one remembered who Jane Doe number 47 Farads was, and no one left flowers. In the 1,980 seconds, as forensic techniques advanced, Kern County compiled a list of cases eligible for re-examination using dental records and dried blood analysis, but 47 Farads wasn't included. The reason, noted briefly: insufficient sample, low priority. Murder cases with witnesses or direct evidence always took precedence. An unidentified body buried as Jane Doe held little operational value. In the years that followed, limited funding kept most old files sealed, and 47 Farads remained untouched in its cabinet. In 1987, during an archive cleanup, a rookie officer named Roy Benson was tasked with reviewing unidentified cases. From a list of over 200 files, he crossed out more than half as past investigative statute. The name 47 Farads was marked in green ink, with a note, "Filed, remains reburied." That mark would later become the first detail reconnecting a timeline broken for nearly half a century, but at the time, it was just monotonous paperwork. By the late 1,990 seconds, when the archive moved to a new facility, old evidence was gathered into wooden crates, collectively labeled unsolved, divided by unidentified. Archive. The nylon bags, containing the oilcloth and rope from 47 Farads, were among them, stacked with dozens of other evidence bags. On one bag's corner, a tape read, "Oil residue, keep sealed." Years later, that oil residue would help pinpoint origin and timeline, but back then, no one knew, and no one cared. In the early 2000s, the NamUs database was created, cataloging missing persons and unidentified remains nationwide. When Kern County staff entered data, they typed only basic details for 47 Farads: gender, age range, date found, geographic coordinates. No one linked it to the 1,975 disappearance of young Elena Morales. Her file sat in a separate drawer, labeled Missing Adult. Presumed voluntary departure. 2 files, 2 people, 2 cabinets in the same sheriff's office, but no one connected them. Thus, nearly half a century passed, thin layers of dust coating the file cabinets. Each summer, heat from old oil wells rose, the acrid smell of gasoline seeping into the office hallways where metal cabinets stood in rows. Inside, the Jane Doe number 47 farads file remained black and white photos, oilcloth scraps, a rope segment, and a cold conclusion. Unidentified female remains. No one knew those simple lines would, years later, lead back to the dusty red road where Elena Morales vanished, and a case thought forgotten would awaken from Bakersfield's soil. From 1980 to 2020, the Jane Doe number 47 farads file drifted through nearly 4 decades in silence. The cabinet holding it was moved 3 times, as the Kern County Sheriff's Department upgraded, from the old Chester Avenue headquarters to a new archive on Truxton Extension, then to an off-site storage near Meadows Field Airport. Each move, staff simply boxed the files, noted quantities, and never read the contents. The label, Unidentified Female Remains, stayed on the cover, its ink fading nearly into the paper. No review ever called for reopening, no one asked about that file. To later generations of officers, 47 farads was just a number among hundreds of unidentified cases past their investigative window. Through the 1,980 seconds and 1,990 seconds, forensic science entered the DNA analysis era, but Kern County, a poor California region of agriculture and oil, lagged behind. New cases relied on fingerprints, dental records, and old film for identification. Unidentified remains in storage were seen as unsolvable puzzles. The National CODIS DNA system launched in the late 1990 seconds, but it took over a decade to enable familial tracing. During that time, 47 farads physical evidence sat in aging nylon bags, rubber degrading, oil from the cloth seeping onto note paper, the rope turning brittle, dust clinging to every fiber. During periodic archive inventories, new staff only logged quantities, stamping, still in storage. Someone once suggested destroying old evidence to save space, but the archive supervisor, a meticulous record keeper, insisted on retention, citing no authorization for disposal. That small decision, seemingly insignificant, saved 47 farads evidence from joining dozens of other files incinerated in later years. In the 2000s, the NAMU's database went live. Young staff entered data in bulk, digitizing old cases. For 47 farads, they typed minimal details. Female, 25 years old, found September 1977, near Kern River Field. No photos, no evidence details, no DNA. On the computer screen, the entry was a faint blip among tens of thousands of Jane Doe files nationwide. As DNA technology advanced, Kern County's limited budget prioritized murders with suspects or missing persons with living relatives. A skeleton buried for nearly half a century wasn't on that list. Each audit, 47 farads file was checked, marked, maintained, and returned to its place. Outside, Bakersfield changed. Old pump jacks were dismantled. Warehouses became truck lots. The land where the remains were found was leveled for new factories. New residents didn't know a makeshift grave once lay there. At Greenlawn Cemetery, the small plaque reading Unidentified Female, found 1,977 remained, tucked behind larger graves, rarely noticed. Cemetery workers occasionally swept leaves, glanced at the number, and moved on. To them, it was just part of local history, no one retold. In 2010, during an archive reorganization, storage switched from logbooks to electronic barcodes. Scanning 47 farads evidence bag, the machine displayed Unidentified female remains. No DNA profile available. A young staffer sighed. If we had DNA, we'd know who she was by now. The words faded into the air, forgotten like the case itself. For 40 years, only time did its work. The paper file yellowed, edges curled, signatures faded. The nylon bag clouded, tape lost stickiness, but, luckily, hadn't fully decayed. On the label, the 1,977 handwritten note was still faintly legible. Oil residue, keep sealed. An incidental line, but the only thread linking the past to future technology. By 2020, in Bakersfield's off-site archive, metal cabinets stood under dim fluorescent lights. A small, dust-covered window let in wind that sounded like a sigh through the cracks. In the fourth drawer, the 47 farads file sat untouched, wedged between other faded cases. It didn't know the outside world now had methods to decode a single hair or bone fragment, enough to name the forgotten. But for now, in Bakersfield, no one noticed. The cabinet door stayed shut, the lock rusted, and inside, the evidence slept, waiting for someone patient or lucky enough to reopen it and let the past speak again. In 2023, a new project launched in Kern County to review all unresolved Jane Doe cases from the 1,960 seconds onward. After years as an administrative burden, old files became a focus thanks to genealogical DNA technology, which had cracked dozens of cold cases in California. At the Cold Case Unit's first meeting in March, Lieutenant Ruben Rivera, the program lead, asked each investigator to pick an unidentified case for testing. As a technician opened the electronic list, among hundreds of entries, one old file stood out. Jane Doe number 40, 7 farads, found 1,977, unidentified female remains. No photos, no dental data, no DNA. Just a few lines in faint courier font. Rivera paused, then said, "We'll start here. The least information can lead to the biggest results." 2 weeks later, the team visited the off-site archive, where metal cabinets stood, dust thick on the locks. Opening the fourth drawer, they found the evidence bag labeled, "Evidence 47 farads, oil residue, keep sealed." Its nylon cloudy but intact. Rivera, gloved, lifted it carefully. The sharp smell of oil and old paper filled the air. Inside were 3 items: a dark oilcloth fragment, a rope segment, and a bag of soil with small bones labeled femur fragment and tibia fragment. A forensic technician leaned close, whispering, "If we're lucky, the tibia might have enough for DNA." Rivera nodded, ordering an immediate transfer to the lab. Kern County's forensic lab, then partnering with the California Department of Justice pilot program for old DNA samples, received the evidence in late April. Under cold white lab lights, Chief Technician Dr. Megan Shu used a scalpel to cut a small tibia section, placing it in a centrifuge for extraction. After 46 years, the bone was brittle, collagen nearly gone, but mitochondrial DNA might still be viable. "Don't expect much," Shu told Rivera over the phone, "but sometimes the hopeless samples say what no one expects." The process took over 2 weeks. Samples were soaked in EDTA, centrifuged multiple times to isolate organic residue. Under a microscope, DNA strands appeared faint but clear. The lab amplified them via PCR and sent results to Sacramento for final verification. On May 12, the state server returned a preliminary report. Mitochondrial DNA sequence successfully generated. Sample integrity. High confidence. For the first time in nearly half a century, 47 farads had a true identifying marker. Around the same time, Rivera contacted the DNA Doe Project, a national volunteer group using genetic genealogy to identify unnamed victims. The group had solved dozens of U.S. cases by matching DNA to public genealogy databases. A week later, Dr. Shu sent the raw DNA data file to DDP's experts in Oregon. From there, 47 farads DNA was uploaded to GED Match and Family Tree DNA to search for familial matches. While awaiting results, Rivera reopened the 1,977 file. Black and white photos of bones, oilcloth, and rope were yellowed, edges cracked. He noted every detail in an updated report. Discovery, location, evidence, burial depth, estimated time of death. All data was digitized and entered into NamUs for the first time. Under possible link, Rivera added, "Check missing person 1,975, Bakersfield, Morales, E." That line, once penciled in the 1977 original, was now digitally re-entered, a quiet thread connecting two generations of investigation. In June, preliminary GED match results arrived, a DNA match with the Morales family in Arizona, over 800 kilometers from Bakersfield. The match strength was 3.1 centimorgans, suggesting a distant fourth-degree relation. Rivera called Dr. Shu, her voice light but excited. If we trace a few more branches, we might find closer kin. Rivera paused, then said, "Start building the family tree. Don't miss a detail." Work continued through the summer. In the chilly archive room, the 47 farads file was opened for the first time in 46 years. Old typed lines, blurred green ink, were carefully re-entered. Outside, Bakersfield's hot wind blew through warehouses and pump jacks, still carrying the metallic, gasoline smell of years past. No one in the team knew what lay at the end, but for the first time in nearly half a century, Jane Doe number 47 farads was no longer a meaningless code in a cabinet. It had DNA, a direction, and, most importantly, people listening to its call from the past. Jane Doe number 47 farads' DNA was uploaded to the online genealogy databases GED Match and Family Tree DNA in early July 2023. It was routine for modern investigators, but for Rivera and Dr. Chu, it was a milestone. The first time they saw the complete genetic sequence of a victim exhumed from 1977. The numbers, symbols, and gene strands on the screen were no longer abstract. They were the voice of a woman buried unnamed for nearly half a century. The data was encoded and automatically compared to millions of voluntary DNA samples across the U.S. For the first few days, the system showed no significant hits. Matches were scattered. Distant relatives in Texas, New Mexico, most too weak to trace lineage. Rivera knew this game took time. 4 weeks later, on an early August morning, GED Match sent a new alert. High-confidence partial match. Surname, Morales. Location, Tucson, Arizona. The list included Lucia Morales Hall, born 1958, who had submitted DNA for a personal genealogy project. The match strength was 1.2%, suggesting a sibling relationship. The room went quiet for a few seconds. Dr. Shu looked at Rivera, saying softly, "If this is right, we've found a blood relative." Rivera nodded, exhaling slowly, as if steadying himself to not miss a single detail. Per protocol, the cold case unit contacted the DNA Doe project to verify the results. 2 days later, the Oregon team sent an independent report. Same conclusion, a strong enough genetic match to likely be a sibling. Rivera held the printed results, staring at the long string of shared centimorgans meaningless to outsiders but to him like a map revealing the true name of the deceased. He sent a formal request to the Arizona coroner's office to confirm the matched individual's identity. 3 days later, an email confirmed. Lucia Morales, Hall, residing in Tucson, had reported her sister Elena Morales missing in 1975 from Bakersfield. Rivera read the response at least 3 times before leaning back, still holding the DNA printout. 48 years, he said quietly, and we finally have a name. That afternoon, he and a forensic technician drove over 8 hours to Tucson. In a small house, at the end of a street, a woman in her mid-60s greeted them cautiously. When Rivera explained the visit and showed the photo of the unidentified female, found 1977 grave marker, Lucia fell silent for a long time. Then she stood, retrieved an old framed photo of a young woman in a waitress uniform, brown hair lightly curled, eyes smiling. "This is Elena," she said, voice trembling. "My sister went missing that August. No one ever found anything." Rivera requested a DNA sample for comparison. Lucia agreed, eyes still teary. She asked only one question. "Are you sure the person in that grave is my sister?" Rivera replied, "We can't be certain yet, but everything points to her." Lucia's cheek swab was rushed to Sacramento. Results came the next week, a 99.97% match sibling bloodline. No doubt remained. Jane Doe number 47 farads was Elena Morales, the 1-year-old who vanished from Bakersfield in 1975. The official identification report was signed by the California State Coroner's Office and sent to Kern County. For the first time in nearly half a century, the 47 Farads file was updated with a real name, Morales, Elena, identified via mitochondrial and autosomal DNA match, 2023. The news spread quickly internally. Rivera printed the confirmation, placing it beside the old 1977 black and white crime scene photo. Two images of blurry past and cold digital data formed a real person. He told the team, "From now on, we don't call her 47 Farads, use her name, Elena Morales." Everyone nodded silently. In forensics, naming a Jane Doe isn't just closing a file, it's restoring identity, restoring truth. Rivera immediately ordered the 1975 missing person case reopened for cross-referencing. The old MP7-5184 file was pulled from the basement, paper yellowed, edges worn. The final line from that year remained, "Case suspended, presumed voluntary departure." Rivera stared, frowning. Voluntary departure? She was killed and buried 2 miles outside town. Without another word, he signed for reinvestigation. At the Kern County office, the official update hit Name Us. Under status, unidentified was erased. Replaced with identified, Elena Morales, Bakersfield, CA, 1975. The name, after 48 years, returned to the national database. In the quiet office, Rivera watched the new entry appear on the screen. One blank field was filled, but behind it, a door had opened, leading back to the darkness of 1975, where someone thought they'd buried a secret forever. The DNA report arrived at Kern County in a sealed envelope, the red stamp of the California Department of Justice, prominent in the top right corner. Lieutenant Rivera held the thin paper, his hand trembling slightly not from surprise, but from the weight of what it carried. The final line, printed in bold, read, "Confirmed 99.97% sibling match. DNA source. Lucia Morales, Hall. Divided by unidentified remains number 47 Farads." Below it was Dr. Megan Huth's signature. After nearly half a century, the nameless woman found in the oil-soaked soil in 1977 had a true name, Elena Morales. The entire cold case unit fell silent for a moment. Rivera placed the report on the conference table, saying softly, "We've given her back her identity. Now it's time to find out what happened." He ordered the Records Division to reopen the entire 1975 missing person case. Yellowed files were pulled from shelves, dust rising with the smell of old dampness. Every report page, every photo was spread across the large investigation room table. Handwritten notes from the duty officer that night, a witness list, a map of Union Avenue, and a note reading, "No foul play suspected." Rivera shook his head. They didn't know what they missed. A digital technician began scanning the entire file into the electronic database. On the screen, old black and white photos appeared, blurry but revealing details overlooked in the past. One image of the scene where Elena left the diner showed deep tire tracks on the shoulder unmeasured then. But now, image recognition software could estimate the vehicle type. "These are F-Series pickup tires," the technician said. Rivera raised an eyebrow. Patrol cops back then used phone 100 seconds. He jotted it down. The archive sent over the old evidence bag, oilcloth, rope, soil samples, and a few dark fabric scraps. Rivera examined the faded label, reading the handwritten, "Oil residue, keep sealed." He ordered everything sent to the modern forensic lab for re-examination using touch DNA and microfiber analysis. 48 years ago, they didn't have the tools, Rivera said. Now we do. In the compiled report, Rivera's first request was to reconstruct Elena Morales' timeline based on all data. Her last shift at the Red Lantern Diner, the walk home, the last witness to see her. Old file data, combined with current 3D terrain maps, showed the route was only about 1.4 miles, a walk of less than 20 minutes. Her body was found 2 years later north of Kern River Field, 3.2 miles from her last known location. Between those points, there were no homes, only land owned by oil companies, an area civilians rarely ventured. She couldn't have gotten there on her own, Rivera said, pointing at the map. Someone had a vehicle and knew that area well. No. He had the team check the list of people with access to the oil field in 1975. Among them was Roy Benson, the patrol officer on duty the night Elena vanished. Benson had signed the evidence transfer log in 1977 when her remains were found. It was a coincidence Rivera couldn't ignore. He requested Benson's personnel file, all patrol logs, shift diaries, and detailed reports from the night of the 12th of August 1975. While the team dug into the past, Dr. Shu finalized the DNA report. Beyond confirming the sibling match with Elena Morales, she analyzed genetic micromarkers in the bones, showing Elena's ancestry was characteristic of the U.S. Southwest, specifically Central California, perfectly matching her 1,975 demographic profile. No doubt, Shu wrote. Jane Doe, number 47 farads, and Elena Morales are one. The report included a recommendation. Suggest testing oil residue and fabric fibers to determine death environment. When Rivera read that line, he knew this was no longer just about identification, it was a homicide case. Was she strangled or beaten, buried there or dumped? Who held that oilcloth and rope? Questions silent for nearly half a century began echoing in the cold room. That night, Rivera stayed late at the office. He placed two photos side by side, one of Elena from the 1,975 missing person file, another of the 1,977 scene, just bones and dry soil. 48 years separated them, and a promise. She would no longer be a number. On the computer, Rivera typed the first line of the cold case unit's new report. Case reopened. Morales, Elena. Identified via mitochondrial and autosomal DNA, 2023. Reinvestigation authorized. The printed page was clipped into the file, a red reopened stamp pressed firmly on the top. Outside the window, Bakersfield streetlights cast a yellow glow on the glass, reflecting a figure hunched over old files. Each yellowed page, each old typed line, now stood as a witness. Rivera closed the file, whispering to himself, "Now, Elena, tell us what happened." The Kern County Forensic Lab opened the sealed 1,977 evidence envelope on the morning of the 17th of September 2023. Nearly half a century later, the nylon was cloudy, the tape degraded, the handwritten oil residue, keep sealed, nearly gone, just faint gray smudges. Inside were three items: a dark brown oilcloth fragment, a folded rope segment, and a few hand-sized dark fabric scraps, caked with dry soil and a thick oil smell. Lab technician Angela Ruiz, wearing new nitrile gloves, placed each item on a stainless steel tray. "This is one of the oldest samples we've ever worked," she said quietly to a colleague. No one replied, only the hum of the air conditioner and the white light on the cold steel table. First, they tested for touch DNA. Under a microscope, fabric scraps were separated with fine tweezers and placed in enzyme solution vials. Any remaining skin cells, sweat, or proteins could yield results. The qPCR scanner ran for hours, displaying faint but detectable oscillating graphs, human biological traces on both the cloth and rope. "We've got something," Angela said softly, gripping a vial. The DNA samples were backed up for full sequencing. Next was synthetic microfiber analysis. Materials specialist Dr. Miles Keegan took the rope, placing it under a Raman spectroscopy microscope to measure polymer structure and dye composition. After hours, the screen showed Polyblend M70, military grade, manufactured 1,973, supplier Defense Surplus Company, Los Angeles. Keegan paused, checking a state database. The rope wasn't commercially sold. It was issued only to municipal units, including local police and oil field security at the time. He tapped the table, noting, "Rope type M70, restricted distribution, possible police or municipal supply chain." Simultaneously, the chemistry team analyzed the oilcloth, using gas chromatography mass spectrometry, GCMS. They separated compounds embedded in the fabric. The analysis chart showed peaks characteristic of crude oil mixed with industrial additives used for lubricating and rust-proofing heavy truck engines. A technician remarked, "Unusually high hydrotreated light distillates." The data was run through software comparing archived California refinery samples from the 1,970 seconds. The result: Chevron, Type B, industrial lubricant, a specialty oil supplied only to government transport facilities and Bakersfield police garages from 1,970 to 1,978. Rivera was briefed that afternoon. As he entered the lab, Angela pointed to the board. "This wasn't in commercial oil stocks. It's vehicle-grade oil." Rivera stared at the printed data, silent for a moment. He understood the implication. The oilcloth that held Elena Morales' body came from the same supply as police materials. It couldn't be coincidence. He ordered the team to compile a detailed analysis. Each item was given a new ID code, photographed in 4 kelvins, with every fiber and oil stain logged. The unidentified DNA was sent to Sacramento's state lab for gender testing and CODIS comparison. Rivera also requested weathering analysis, using carbon and oxygen isotope measurements on the rope to estimate environmental exposure. Results showed the rope was buried for 46-48 years, perfectly matching Elena's disappearance. To avoid errors, they brought in an independent expert from the University of California, Dr. Leah Corwin, a veteran evidence analyst. After reviewing the findings, she concluded, if this oil was truly exclusive to Bakersfield police garages in the mid-70 seconds, only someone with internal access could have taken it out. I've never seen civilians use it. Rivera wrote her statement verbatim in the report. The next week, the forensic team dug deeper. Under an electron microscope, they found metal dust particles in the cloth manganese and zinc alloy used to plate patrol cars from 1,971,975. Another link to police vehicles. Meanwhile, preliminary DNA results returned. The sample was male, not in the National Criminal Database, but consistent with European ancestry, biological age 25-40 at the time of evidence contact. Rivera read the report, his voice low. This could be the person who tied the rope. All findings were logged in the forensic re-examination report. Case number 47 Farads reopened. Dr. Shu's temporary conclusion was bolded. Trace DNA, male, European ancestry. Petroleum residue identified as Chevron Type B. Product exclusively used by Bakersfield PD motor pool, circa 1973. 1978. Rope Type M70. Municipal supply origin. Likely evidence indicates connection to law enforcement materials. Holding the report, Rivera felt each page heavy. Items deemed irrelevant in 1977 were now incriminating evidence. He stared at the oilcloth photo on the screen, its glossy black sheen reflecting lab lights. Someone thought they could bury it all, he said quietly, but what they used to hide it betrayed them. Stepping out, Rivera paused in the long, white-lit hallway, gripping the report. In his mind, numbers echoed. 1,975, 1,977, 2023. 3 points tied by oil, rope, and DNA. The timeline was now whole, and from evidence thought decayed, the truth was rising. Only one question remained. Who, among those in uniform back then, took that oilcloth from the garage and why? 3 days after the forensic team submitted the comprehensive report, the cold case unit held an urgent meeting. The whiteboard was covered with evidence photos. Oil, soaked cloth, M70 rope, GC, MS charts, showing hydrotreated light distillates, and a bold red note. Chevron Type B, Bakersfield PD garage supply. Rivera pointed to the enlarged oilcloth image, saying tersely, "This is the key. If we trace the material's source, we'll know who had access in 1975. He tasked forensic technician Angela Ruiz and materials specialist Dr. Keegan with tracing the supply chain. They started with city supply archives, old carbon copy records, typed and handwritten. For the first week, data was dry. Lubricant shipment, rope bulk order, municipal equipment. But on the 8th day, in the 1975 records, Angela found a file labeled Equipment Requisition, Bakersfield Police Department Motor Pool. The last page listed 25 units rope M70, 10 barrels, Chevron, Type B oil, 15 sheets, petroleum tarp. At the bottom, a familiar signature, Roy Benson, Deputy Patrolman, dated the 9th of August 1975. The room went still. Rivera pulled the file closer, studying the slanted, firm B in the signature. 4 days before Elena Morales vanished, he said slowly. The receipt was photographed, enlarged for handwriting analysis. Comparison with Benson's personnel file signature showed a perfect match in pressure, slant, and Y formation. The handwriting report confirmed. Signature belongs to Officer Roy Benson, Bakersfield Police Department, 1975. Rivera tapped his pen on the table. Materials don't just leave the depot, he said. If that rope and oilcloth appeared in the case, only this person could have taken them out. He ordered a review of all supply requisitions from that batch, including lists of garage staff, mechanics, and officers authorized to use the materials. Data showed most were used for patrol car maintenance and depot cover repairs. No theft was reported. Next, the team pulled the August 1975 patrol logs. Benson was assigned to Union Avenue, the exact route Elena walked the night she vanished. At 10:30 p.m., he radioed, "Patrol clear, all quiet." 20 minutes later, the radio log cut off. No one noticed then, as signals often glitched. But now, that gap aligned perfectly with when Elena left the diner. When Sacramento's results arrived, the male DNA from the rope was confirmed to have a direct familial link to Roy Benson, not a random coincidence. Compared to a public DNA sample from his son, submitted for a 2019 medical test, the system showed a 99.8% father-son match. Rivera read the report, eyes fixed on the number. "Touch DNA on the rope," he said. "And the man who signed for it is the father of the matching sample." To strengthen the case, Rivera accessed Bakersfield City Supply archives, now digitized. With the finance department's help, they recovered the list of employees with depot access in the 1,970 seconds. Of 37 names, only Roy Benson had off-duty material requisition rights, a rare privilege for officers patrolling oil fields, where equipment covers were needed for night checks. An old internal report noted, "Benson often takes materials for field maintenance. No loss reported." No one then thought field maintenance masked a crime. Angela built a timeline. The 9th of August 1975, Benson signed for M70 rope and oilcloth. The 12th of August 1975, Elena Morales vanished on Benson's patrol route. 1977. Elena's remains were found in matching oilcloth and rope. 2023. Rope DNA matched Benson's lineage. The timeline glared red on the board. No longer speculation. Rivera ordered a review of all Benson's 1,975 patrol reports for discrepancies. An audio technician, restoring old radio tapes, found the August 12 tape had a section overwritten with artificial static. Forensic audio proved this could only be done from a patrol car's internal radio, the kind Benson drove. Concurrently, the team checked maintenance records for the F-100 patrol car, plate G2541, used by Benson in 1975. Transport records showed that in September, Benson took the car for engine cleaning at a garage instead of the station. The report noted, interior washed with solvent, heavy oil stains on floorboard. The oil Chevron Type B appeared again. As evidence converged, the picture clarified. The oilcloth and rope were legally taken from the police depot, then used the night Elena vanished. Male DNA on the rope proved a familial link to Benson. The oil matched the type exclusive to police garages. All loose threads pointed to one man, the officer who signed for the materials, patrolled that night, and coincidentally filed the initial missing person report. Rivera stared at the evidence board. fingers tapping slowly. "No doubt left," he said softly. "The man who signed that receipt tied that rope." In the cold case unit's silent office, only the air conditioner hummed as cold light fell on a photo of Roy Benson, 1975, next to the oilcloth image, its sheen reflecting a new red stamp, "Suspect identified." Kern County's digital forensics room, in the sheriff's basement, housed hundreds of magnetic tapes, radio logs, and shift recordings from the 1,970 seconds. Lieutenant Rivera and audio technician Evan Ward went there on a Monday morning, the air thick with dust and metal. Cardboard boxes labeled Patrol Communication 1975 were stacked to the ceiling, each holding dozens of reel-to-reel tapes, most never replayed. Ward ran his hand over the labels, finding a box marked Week 33, AUG 1975, the week Elena Morales vanished. He pulled out a dark tape, its label nearly peeling. In faint pen, it read, "Shift B, Benson, Air." The old tape player was dusted off, its magnetic head replaced. When Ward pressed play, the first sound was the crackle of analog static, followed by a steady male voice. "Unit 7 reporting, patrol clear, Union Avenue, all quiet." Rivera glanced at the timer on the screen, marking 10:27 p.m. The radio signal clicked off. Then came 10 minutes of silence, only faint background hum. Ward slowed the playback, using software to filter out low-frequency noise. A series of interrupted signals appeared on the audio graph. "Here," he said, "from minute 10 to 12, there's an overwrite." Modern technology allowed the separation of noise layers. Ward activated spectrographic analysis, the screen shifting to vibrant color bands, each corresponding to a different frequency. Amid the dense static, an unusual wave stood out. High frequency, around 3.4 kilohertz, spiking for a few seconds. Ward zoomed in, filtering noise and boosting mid-range frequencies. A faint sound emerged through the speakers. A car engine, then a door click, followed by a short, sharp sound, like a woman's cry of "no," cut off mid-breath, then a heavy thud and rapid breathing. Rivera froze. Ward looked up, voice low. "Sounds like a scream." They replayed the segment several times, then sent the file to the California DOJ's specialized audio lab for verification. 3 days later, the report came back. Forensic audio analysis confirms presence of high-frequency human vocalization consistent with female distress call. Duration 0.8 seconds. Timestamp between 22:35–22:36. That was exactly when Elena Morales left the diner on the 12th of August 1975. The analyst added, "No radio response following signal. Suggests recording was manually interrupted or overwritten." Concurrently, the cold case unit's data team reviewed handwritten 1,975 patrol logs. In the old file was a small, cracked leather notebook labeled Patrol Log, District South, Officer Benson. The pages were yellowed, green ink, faded but legible. 2,200. Begin patrol Union Ave, divided by 2230. Routine check diner zone, divided by 2,300. No incident. The anomaly was between 2230 and 23, where the ink was darker, the handwriting shaky, with an inserted note, "Assisted driver near canal." At the log's end, Benson wrote, "Return to station 015, quiet shift." No report accompanied the assisted driver note. No witnesses, no follow-up. Rivera noticed the inserted line's handwriting differed from the rest, as if added later. To be sure, he had a document examiner compare the writing. The result, the assisted driver near canal note was written in Parker Quink blue, black ink, produced in 1978, while the original log used Waterman blue, 1,975. The only conclusion, the note was added at least 3 years after the event. "He altered the log," Rivera said, eyes fixed on the page. Meanwhile, transport records confirmed Benson was the only officer patrolling Union Avenue that night. No other vehicles reported incidents near the canal where Elena's body was found 2 years later. All other radio logs were continuous, only Benson's channel had a gap. Rivera called the team, pinning up 2 columns on the board, log evidence and audio evidence. On the left, the patrol log with the inserted note. On the right, the audio spectrograph showing the scream. Both tell the same story, he said. A man stopped his vehicle at the canal between 22:35 and 22:40. A woman cried out, then the radio was manually cut. He pointed to the spectrograph where the high-frequency line dropped. Then, he continued, the tape resumes with Unit 7 clear at around 23:10. That means the entire event happened in 35 minutes. Technicians simulated the location. With the radio range of a 1,973 farads 100 patrol car, the signal loss had to be within 5 miles of the Kern River Field Tower, exactly where Elena was found. Overlaying modern GPS data on the old map, a red dot marked the abandoned oil field. Rivera circled it, gripping the pen tightly. He didn't leave his route, he said. He turned off the radio, got out, and came back. The final evidence came from the state's technical unit. Signal distortion analysis showed the noise when the car door opened matched the hinge spring of a Ford F-100, identifiable by its distinct sound. Combined with the engine noise 730 Hz, it matched the V8 5 liters in patrol cars of that era. No doubt remained. The 12th of August 1975, recording came from Deputy Roy Benson's vehicle. Rivera held the audio report, rereading the conclusion. Audio source likely from patrol unit operated by Officer R. Benson, recorded during incident of female distress near Union Avenue. In the room, with only the hum of computers, he said softly, now, Elena doesn't just have a name, she has a voice. A voice from an old tape, from the silence between radio signals, from a place the perpetrator thought no one would ever hear. From the restored audio, the cold case unit confirmed the patrol car in the radio recording was a 1,970 seconds Ford F-100. But Rivera wanted more a physical link, a real image proving that vehicle was near where Elena vanished. He recalled the 1,975 initial report mentioning a gas station security camera near Union Avenue. Back then, most surveillance used 35mm film, developed weekly and submitted to police if needed. Rivera ordered the team to check if those films still existed. 48 years later, unbelievably, they did forgotten in the town's archive, in a carton labeled Petrocam 1,975. Inside were 8 faded black reels, old labels, one marked August 8, 15, 1,975. Rivera sent them to the California Historical Imaging Center in Sacramento. High-resolution nitrate film scanning digitized each frame. As technicians slowed through the frames, they found footage from the night of August 12, angled toward the highway in front of Redwood Oil gas station, just 400 meters from the Red Lantern Diner. On frame 212, twin headlights cut across the lens. Then a Ford F-100 pickup stopped at the curb. The image was grainy, but a small shield logo on the door glinted under a streetlight. The Bakersfield Police Department emblem. The door opened, and a man in uniform stepped out, tall, cap pulled low. In seconds, he glanced around and walked off frame toward the road to Elena's boarding house. The timestamp, 22:34, matching the scream on the radio tape. Rivera stared at the screen, whispering, he was there. For verification, the imaging team analyzed vehicle identifiers, headlight style, mirror size, antenna position. Comparing with Bakersfield PD's 1,975 vehicle roster, only 3 phone 100 seconds were issued, but only G2541 had a round mirror and right-side antenna as in the footage. Garage records confirmed G2541 was assigned to Deputy Roy Benson for all of August 1,975. Needing stronger physical evidence, Rivera ordered re-examination of paint and tire marks collected near the 1,977 canal site. Under a scanning electron microscope, SEM, the paint split into 3 layers: galvanized steel base, gray primer, and outer gray-green coat. EDS spectroscopy showed lead and chromium matching Ford's N6 police gray code, exclusive to 1,974, 1,976 farads, series patrol vehicles. This sample is only from official vehicles, the materials expert reported. Rivera held the printout, tapping the line, match is greater than 99.9%. The tire marks were cross-referenced with the FBI's tread pattern database. The 1,977 soil impressions showed a zigzag tread with side grooves matching Goodyear Suburban High Miler 15-inch tires, standard for Bakersfield patrol cars in 1975. In the evidence vault, original photos remained, 2 black and white shots of tire tracks by the canal, grooves 0.9 inches deep, turning inward. From the angle, experts reconstructed the path. The vehicle stopped, backed slightly, and drove north, matching the wind direction and oilcloth location. One more piece: the crude oil in the soil under the oilcloth. Carbon isotope analysis showed hydrocarbons identical to engine maintenance oil for official phone 100 seconds. Comparing zinc dialkyl-dithiophosphate additives in the scene's oil and police depot samples, the match was nearly perfect. Rivera underlined the report: all physical residues, paint, tire, and lubricant, consistent with Ford F-100, Police Unit G-2000, 541. In the old archive, Rivera found a 1,975 photo of Roy Benson standing by that very vehicle, plate G-2000, 541 visible under a Bakersfield PD Traffic Division sign. He pinned it to the evidence board, below the gas station film frame. The 2 images, official and incidental, aligned in vehicle, time, and place. It's not a theory anymore, Rivera said, voice hoarse. That's his truck. To rule out bias, he had G-2000, 541's maintenance history checked. The 15th of September 1975, record noted. Interior cleaned with solvent, heavy oil stains on floorboard. The cleaning happened 1 month after the disappearance. A handwritten garage note added, heavy oil smell, like depot pump stock. No one suspected then, but now, it was evidence. Rivera said, he cleaned the truck to erase traces. When all results were compiled, the technical team's final report stated, Redwood oil footage, the 12th of August 1975, confirms presence of official F-100 G-2000, 541, at the victim's last location. Paint, oil, and tire analysis fully match a Bakersfield PD vehicle used by Deputy Roy Benson. No other official vehicles were in the area per patrol logs at that time. Rivera read it, silent. He looked around the cold room, lit by neon, the blurry film, paint samples in plastic bags, a 1,975 Bakersfield map with a red dot on Union Avenue. Everything points to one spot, he said, voice low. The truck. His truck was the last place Elena Morales was alive. He stepped to the evidence board, pinning a red marker on the gas station frame, centered on the faint twin headlights. That night, he left the diner, cut the radio, drove to the canal, and when he turned it back on, Elena wasn't breathing. The room went quiet. No one spoke, only the air conditioner's steady hum. A case nearly half a century old now had a clear path. Roy Benson's Ford F-100, a vehicle bearing Justice's emblem, was the silent witness exposing the crime it hid. In early October 2023, after 6 months of reinvestigation, the Cold Case Unit completed a comprehensive report over 300 pages. The cover read clearly, Comprehensive Forensic Summary Case Reopened Number 47 Farads, Morales Elena. Below, the responsible signature, Lieutenant Ruben Rivera, Kern County Sheriff's Office, Cold Case Division. The third-floor meeting room was bathed in white light. On the table, files were ordered. DNA, materials, audio, logs, vehicle. Each section was color, tabbed. Rivera stood at the table's head, voice low and firm. Let's begin. Part 1. DNA. Dr. Megan Shue presented. DNA, from Jane Doe number 47, Farad's tibia matched Lucia Morales, Hall, Elena's sister, at 99.97%, confirming the victim's identity. Male DNA on the rope showed a direct familial link to Roy Benson, former Bakersfield PD officer. No matches in CODIS. She said, no chance of randomness. It all points one way. Part 2. Materials. Dr. Miles Keegan displayed slides of the oilcloth, rope, and paint. The report detailed, oilcloth, contained Chevron Type B oil, industrial grade, supplied only to Bakersfield police garages, 1,973, 1,978. Rope, Polyblend M70, Defense Surplus Company specialty stock, issued internally to public agencies. Paint, Ford N6. Police gray, 99.9% match with F100 plate G2000, 541 used by Benson. Keegan said firmly, no civilian in that era could access all three materials. They existed only within Bakersfield PD's scope. Part 3. Audio. Technician Evan Ward showed the spectrograph. The 3.4 kHz spike played on screen. A 10-minute gap in the 12th of August 1975. Radio log. Ward hit play, and the familiar sound filled the quiet room. Engine hum, door click. Then the choked, no, before the radio cut. A hush fell. This, Ward said, is Elena Morales' last moment alive. And that recording came from Benson's patrol car. We matched the V8 engine frequency, door hinge, and interior noise, all align. Part 4. Patrol logs. Rivera presented this himself, placing Benson's cracked leather logbook before the team, its ink yellowed. The assisted driver near canal note was added in 1978 ink, impossible for 1,975. He pointed to the enlarged text on screen. That means he altered the log at least 3 years after the disappearance. And the canal he wrote is where the body was found. Part 5. Vehicle. The redwood oil footage played. Twin headlights of an F100. Police logo glinting. A man stepping out. Rivera said slowly, that's G2000, 541, registered to Benson. No other matching vehicle patrolled that area that night. Oil, paint, and tire marks at the scene are a perfect match. He was there, the last to see Elena Morales. He took a breath, scanning the room. Any single piece might be called coincidence. But together DNA, materials, audio, logs, vehicle, they're not coincidence. They're a unified system, and at its center is one man, Roy Benson. No one spoke. Only the fan's hum and neon light, reflected on the board labeled case number 47 farads, resolved linkage analysis. Rivera continued, we've not only proven Benson's involvement with modern forensics, but shown abuse of power. He used official vehicles and materials to commit and conceal a crime. This case, beyond murder, is evidence of a system betrayed. That afternoon, the report was officially stamped. The final page recommended. Based on cumulative forensic, material, and circumstantial evidence, we recommend formal prosecution of Roy Benson, Ret., for the murder of Elena Morales, 1,975. Rivera signed and sent it to the Kern County District Attorney's Office. 2 days later, Chief Prosecutor Carla Mendoza called a closed meeting. She read the report all morning, page by page, pausing at red match confirmed lines. At the end, she looked up at Rivera. Do we have enough to prosecute? Rivera replied, nothing's more certain, ma'am. Victim DNA, vehicle oil, altered logs, radio tape, and truck footage all close on one man. Mendoza paused, then nodded. Prepare the arrest warrant. I'll sign. That afternoon, in the cold case unit's small office, Rivera got a call from the DA. Prosecution order approved. He hung up, looking out the window where late-day sun gilded the parking lot. Wind from Kern River blew through, carrying the familiar smell of earth and oil. He whispered, as if to himself, 48 years, Elena. We've heard your voice, and we'll make him pay. On the desk, case file number 47 farads closed. On its spine, a fresh red stamp. Referred for prosecution Oct. 2023. The case Bakersfield once forgot had stepped into the legal light, ready for its final phase where justice, though late, would be called by name. In March 2024, nearly half a century after Elena Morales vanished, a convoy of unmarked Kern County Sheriff's Office vehicles quietly entered a calm residential area in Oildale, north of Bakersfield. The sky was gray, desert wind sweeping through palm rows, stirring fine dust across rooftops. In the lead car, Lieutenant Ruben Rivera reopened the search warrant, its red ink fresh. Search warrant number 24-0317. Subject, Roy Benson, 78 years old. Below it, the charge. Suspicion of second-degree homicide, case 47 Farads. Elena Morales, 1975. Benson's small wooden house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, painted faded green, the front yard covered in dry leaves. Windows were shut tight, heavy curtains drawn. Neighbors rarely saw him outside. After retiring in 1995, Benson lived alone, his wife having died early, his son moving to Arizona. Medical records showed he was being treated for chronic lung disease and high blood pressure. But Rivera knew. Behind that frail appearance was a man who once understood every investigative procedure and believed he'd gotten away with it. At 8:05 a.m., the forensic response team moved in. 3 knocks echoed. No answer. Rivera signaled. An officer read the search warrant aloud through a bullhorn. Still silence. 10 seconds later, the entry team used tools to breach the lock. The door swung open, dust billowing. Flashlights swept the stuffy room, thick with old cigarette smoke and machine oil. In the corner, Roy Benson sat in an armchair, cloudy eyes fixed on them. He showed no surprise, just rasped. "Finally here, huh?" Rivera replied curtly. "Yes, Mr. Benson. We have a search warrant under California state law." The small rooms were cluttered. Wooden cabinets, cardboard boxes, old bookshelves stacked with files, papers, and work items. Flashlights, faded badges, rusted nameplates. On the wall hung a photo of him with the 1974 patrol team when Elena Morales was just 20, still alive in Bakersfield. As technicians opened a closet, they found a locked metal box hidden under loose floorboards. Inside, police medals, an old notebook, and a gray service jacket with dark brown stains on the collar. Angela Ruiz, the scene technician, leaned down with a UV light. Tiny fibers glowed. She carefully tweezed them into a sealed vial, labeling, "Sample H, 1 hair fragment, brown." And from, in the back room, they seized a wooden box of papers, including an F-100 maintenance log listing plate G2541. Final note. Vehicle retired 1978. Returned for scrap. Rivera glanced, closing the log, voice low. "The truck's gone, but the traces aren't." All evidence was documented, photographed, and sealed per protocol. As the technicians left the scene, Rivera approached Benson, reading his Miranda rights. He sat motionless, hands trembling slightly. "Mr. Roy Benson, you are under arrest for second-degree murder in connection with the death of Elena Morales in 1975. You have the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. Anything you say can be used against you in court." Benson looked up, lips moving. "She just hitched a ride." Rivera didn't respond, just nodded for the officer to cuff him. The hair sample was rushed to the Sacramento forensics lab. 4 days later, results returned. Mitochondrial DNA matched Elena Morales 100%. The report concluded. Hair fragment recovered from police jacket, H1, mitochondrial DNA sequence identical to victim. That meant Elena's hair had been on Benson's jacket, undeniable. Additionally, technicians found in Benson's desk drawer a penciled note listing supplies. Rope, 25 feet, 2 remaining, with initials RB. The paper was torn at the corner, but the handwriting matched the 1975 supply receipt signature. That evidence was added to the prosecution file as the final piece. On the 22nd of March 2024, Roy Benson was escorted to Kern County Sheriff's Office headquarters. Local media had only heard whispers of a 1975 cold case arrest, but police kept details quiet. As he walked the hallway, head down, wrinkled face, Distant flashes popped. Rivera stood behind, eyes locked on him. Nearly 50 years later, the man once hailed as a Bakersfield PD discipline icon was cuffed in the building where he'd worked. At the brief press conference after, Chief Prosecutor Carla Mendoza confirmed, DNA evidence, material forensics, and audio data show suspect Roy Benson killed Elena Morales on the night of August 12, 1975, while on duty. We are charging second-degree murder and evidence tampering. A reporter asked, why second degree? Mendoza replied, no evidence of premeditation, but using official authority to detain and cause death constitutes second-degree murder under California law. Jane Doe. As Benson was led to the car, he turned to Rivera, a thin, trembling smile. You think you know the whole story? Back then, no one cared about a waitress. Rivera replied curtly, voice thick. Now they do. The car door slammed, metal echoing across the concrete yard. That evening, Rivera returned to the office, opening the thick file on his desk. On the cover, below the red referred for prosecution stamp, he handwrote, search executed, suspect in custody, the 22nd of March 2024. Then he placed a 1,975 newspaper photo of Elena Morales on top. She smiled, eyes bright, brown hair gleaming under lights that hair, nearly half a century later, had convicted her killer. Rivera closed the file, sighing. Justice, he said softly, sometimes comes late, but it never forgets the way. The preliminary hearing in State of California versus Roy Benson opened on the 12th of June 2024 at Kern County Superior Court. Nearly half a century after Elena Morales vanished, her name echoed in the packed courtroom of reporters, victim's family, and investigators who'd followed the case. No longer Jane Doe number 47 farads on paper. Elena now had a name, a face, a voice, and someone to face it. Led by Chief Prosecutor Carla Mendoza, the prosecution opened with a brief statement. We are here today not just to close an old case, but to correct a generation's mistake. On the prosecution table, evidence lined up. The oil-soaked tarp sealed in glass, M70 rope, Benson's patrol log copy, Redwood Oil gas station footage, and the 1,977 canal scene map. Mendoza called the first witness Dr. Megan Shu, DNA expert. She presented in cold, sharp, scientific terms. Mitochondrial sample from the victim's tibia matched 99.97% with her sister Lucia Morales, Hall. Male DNA on the rope showed direct lineage to Roy Benson, with random match probability less than 1 in a billion. The jury sat stone still. Mendoza continued, science doesn't lie. And here, science says Benson tied that rope. Second witness, Dr. Miles Keegan, detailed material analysis. Chevron Type B oil on the tarp was exclusive to Bakersfield police garages from 1973, 1978. Polyblend M70 rope, and Ford N6. Police gray paint only appeared on official F-100 patrol vehicles. He pointed to the screen with enlarged tarp photos and chemical spectra. No one without police supply access could possess these items. Next was technician Evan Ward, who recovered the radio tape. He described frequency filtering, reconstructing the woman's choked "no" amid noise. The jury heard the 0.8-second clip through courtroom speakers, the short cry thickening the air. Ward concluded, engine frequency, door hinge, and acoustics all match Ford F-100G, 2541. The vehicle defendant drove on the 12th of August 1975. Finally, Lieutenant Ruben Rivera took the stand. He recounted the nearly 2-year reinvestigation, from dusty archives to DNA results, blurry gas station photos to the Oildale search warrant. He laid out each evidential link. Brown hair on the jacket matching Elena's DNA, altered patrol log, specialty oil samples, tire tracks, and radio tape. All overlooked before, he said. Now for Elena Morales' voice. As prosecution rested, the courtroom hushed. All eyes turned to the silver-haired man in the dock. Roy Benson wore a pale shirt, hands clasped, eyes down. When the judge asked for response, his defense attorney stated, "My client invokes his right to remain silent." Throughout cross-examination, Benson said nothing. No denial, no excuse. Just sat still, occasionally coughing, gaze empty. Defense tried countering with ancient DNA analysis flaws, but Dr. Sue rebutted. Whole genome sequencing doesn't rely on fresh or old samples. This DNA was verified independently 3 times, error rate near 0. Their final push cited elapsed time for detail recall, but the judge rejected. Time doesn't erase crime if evidence persists. On the 4th day, Mendoza read the cumulative evidence summary to the jury. Her voice even, clear, each word like a hammer. Victim's DNA on defendant's jacket. Defendant's lineage DNA on the rope. The oil type, paint type, vehicle type, altered log, radio tape, and photo proving he was there. Each alone insufficient, but together, they paint one picture. Roy Benson. No one else could have done it. Judge David Ellison allowed a 10-minute recess, then returned with a key ruling. All forensic and material evidence submitted by the prosecution is admitted into record. All prosecution evidence accepted, none excluded. Mendoza glanced at Rivera, nodding slightly. A major hurdle cleared. In the hearing's close, prosecution moved to advance to trial on second-degree murder and evidence tampering charges. Benson remained silent. When the judge asked finally, "Do you have anything to say about the charges against you?" he just looked down, shaking his head slightly. The courtroom held heavy silence. Late-day sun streamed through glass, casting on the long wooden table stacked with files. The indictment bolded, "People of the State of California versus Roy Benson. Murder in the second degree, Penal Code 187. The judge read the session's close. Kern County Court officially recognizes the legality and sufficiency of prosecution evidence. The case advances to trial. Defendant Roy Benson remains in custody without bail. As bailiffs cuffed his wrists, Benson glanced up briefly. Aged, gaunt face, empty stare. Rivera, standing behind spectator seats, watched silently. For a moment, he thought he saw Elena's silhouette, the young woman walking under Bakersfield's dim red lights in summer 1975 now with justice on her side. The indictment closed. No applause, no cheers. Just the grave silence of those knowing a final word couldn't restore lost years, but at least the truth was recorded in court minutes. Elena Morales identified, avenged, remembered. Roy Benson's trial entered its second week in a tense atmosphere. Kern County Court added security barriers, media crowding the steps, local TV, live streaming arguments. On the defendant's placard, the stark black State of California versus Roy Benson reflected overhead lights, casting shadows of the elderly man sitting motionless behind his defense attorney. For the prosecution, Carla Mendoza opened Day 8 concisely. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today you'll see what 1,975 technology couldn't do. We'll relive the entire case through forensic data." End of. The courtroom dimmed. A massive screen lit up. A 3D forensic reconstruction appeared, recreating the night of the 12th of August 1975. Using terrain, audio, and lighting data, the software rebuilt Union Avenue at 10:30 p.m. Dim streetlights, Redwood Oil Gas Station, Red Lantern Diner with its blurry red neon sign. In the right corner, a 3D model of Ford F-100 G2000, 541 moved along the patrol route, GPS interpolated from shift logs. A female narrator's voice came through speakers. At 22:33, gas station camera captured official vehicle G2000, 541 stopping, driver exiting, walking toward the boarding house. 2 minutes later, in-car radio audio recorded a woman's scream. The room held its breath. Lights returned. Mendoza called the first witness. Evan Ward, Cold Case Unit Audio Specialist. He took the stand calmly. "We recovered 47 minutes of radio tape from that shift. From 22:35 to 22:36, there's a manual cut-off signal. Frequency filtering revealed a female voice at 3.4 kHz matching distress, cry, acoustics. Source confirmed from Ford F-100 cabin. Ward pressed play. The short audio filling the quiet room less than a second, but slicing like a knife. No. Then metal clank, heavy impact, silence. Many spectators covered mouths. One juror looked down. Second witness, Dr. Megan Shu, DNA expert. She presented enlarged charts. Mitochondrial DNA sequence comparison between victim's bone and Elena Morales' sample perfect match. Then, STR graph comparing male DNA from the rope to Roy Benson's genetic reference. This is 99.99998% congruence, she spelled out. Random unrelated match probability is 1 in 4.7 billion. Statistically, it's his sample. Defense objected, citing ancient DNA contamination risk. But who replied? We controlled contamination with 2 independent protocols, results consistent. Error under 0.00001%. Data is valid. Next, Dr. Miles Keegan, materials expert. He showed scanned micrographs of oilcloth and rope, plus Chevron Type B chemical composition charts. This oil was exclusively supplied to Bakersfield police garages from 1973–1978, he stated firmly. No private businesses in the area had access. He pointed to the G2000-541 patrol car photo, paint, rope, oil, and tire marks, all from the same source. Victim was bound and wrapped in materials taken from police supplies. A juror scribbled notes, face tense. After Keegan, Mendoza called Ruben Rivera. He approached in a gray suit, weary from months of prep. Voice low, steady. I reopened this file in 2023. We weren't hunting a stranger. We traced what Benson himself touched. He detailed finding the 9th of August 1975, supply receipt signed Roy Benson. 4 days before the disappearance. The service jacket in his home with brown hair, matching Elena's DNA. The patrol log rewritten in post-incident ink. He thought time would erase it, Rivera said, but time only clarified the truth. Defense tried flipping it, asking Rivera, could someone else have worn that jacket? He replied, no sir. Jacket has embroidered R. Benson nameplate and South Division insignia. No other officer wore this size. And male DNA on the rope shares his lineage. The firm answer stirred murmurs in the courtroom. Afternoon brought Mendoza showing the 3D reconstruction with audio, the simulation of F-100 headlights sweeping an empty road, Elena in her waitress uniform appearing, her shadow stretching, then vanishing into light. The image froze at 22:36 on screen. That moment, Mendoza said, is where her story ended and Benson's crime began. Hen crace. During the arguments, the defense attorney tried to garner sympathy. My client is a former officer, 78 years old, in poor health. We shouldn't judge past actions with modern technology based on circumstantial evidence. Mendoza responded, her voice not loud but firm. Age doesn't erase crime. No one has the right to take a life and expect time to shield them. At the end of day 10, the jury received a comprehensive packet, 147 evidence photos, 2 pages of DNA data, 36 location maps. They sat silently for hours, reviewing each image, each chart. Some teared up watching the final reconstruction, a 3D model of the desolate land where Elena was found, desert wind blowing through, harsh sunlight glaring, and text appearing on screen. Recovered September 1977, identified April 2023. Judge Ellison called a recess for jury deliberation, adding, "You've witnessed not just technology, but a restored piece of memory. Remember, behind every data point is a person." 1. As courtroom lights brightened, Roy Benson sat still, hands on the table, eyes half closed. On the screen, the silhouette of the Ford F-100 backed into darkness, the silent witness to a crime, now named by every piece of scientific evidence. On the 22nd of June 2024, Kern County Court was packed. After 10 tense days of trial, dozens of witnesses, experts, And over 40 years of silence, State of California versus Roy Benson reached its final phase. Outside, reporters lined the gates, local news channels set up cameras awaiting the verdict. Inside, the air was thick. Elena Morales' family sat in the front row, beside Lieutenant Ruben Rivera and the Cold Case Unit, the team that revived a half-century dust-covered case. As the 12 jurors entered, all eyes turned to them. Judge David Ellison nodded, his voice low and resonant. "Have you reached a verdict?" The jury foreperson, a silver-haired woman, slight frame, stood, hands trembling slightly as she read. "We, the jury in State of California versus Roy Benson, after reviewing all evidence and testimony, find defendant Roy Benson guilty under California Penal Code Section 187 second-degree murder." A soft gasp spread through the room. Lucia Morales covered her face, tears streaming down her hands. Rivera bowed his head, eyes wet but gaze steady. The judge tapped his gavel, signaling order. He looked directly at the defendant. Roy Benson sat expressionless, cloudy eyes staring into the distance. Asked if he wished to speak before sentencing, he slowly stood, hands clasped. His raspy, faint voice. "I didn't think she'd die. I just wanted to teach her a lesson for mouthing off to a cop." He paused, lips tightening. "I was wrong. But back then, no one cared." In the gallery, Lucia's stifled sob rang clear. Mendoza said nothing, gripping the table, eyes blazing. Rivera stood, unable to stay seated, but the judge signaled for order. Judge Ellison flipped through the thick file, pages marked in red. DNA, evidence, logs, audio, gas station footage, forensic reports. He read slowly. Scientific evidence, witnesses, and testimony show the defendant abused his authority, using official vehicles and police supplies to detain, kill, and conceal the body of citizen Elena Morales. This act is not only a personal crime, but a betrayal of the trust society places in law enforcement. Kern County Court sentences defendant Roy Benson to life imprisonment without parole or reduction. Some spectators wept, others sat silent. Only camera clicks audible. Benson didn't react, shoulders trembling slightly. 2 officers approached, cuffing his wrists. The judge struck the gavel. Court adjourned. Case MP 75184 is officially closed. Justice has been served. Lucia Morales sat motionless, tears rolling. Clutching her sister's old photo, Elena's smile, from her Red Lantern Diner days. Rivera stepped over, gently touching her shoulder. "You waited nearly half a century to hear this." Lucia nodded, voice hoarse. "Thank you for not giving up." Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. That evening's news headline blared. Former Bakersfield officer found guilty in 1975 murder. DNA evidence ends 49-year mystery. Images aired. Rivera leaving the court, pushing through the crowd, saying only one line to reporters. "Technology finds truth, but human persistence makes justice endure." That night, at the Cold Case Unit office, the team gathered around a table. The thick file, now just a few pages needing final signatures, lay open. Rivera took the red stamp, pressing it firmly on the first page. Case MP 75184, status closed. The stamp's echo filled the silent room. On the wall behind, Elena Morales' portrait was framed, beside text, "Identified 2023, justice served 2024. Rivera stayed alone after. He opened his notebook, writing the final entry in his investigation log. The 22nd of June 2024, court finds Benson guilty. Elena Morales, 21, vanished the 12th of August 1975. Nearly 50 years later, she has her name back, and justice has its voice. Scientific evidence, human patience, and memory, these are 3 things time cannot bury. He closed the notebook, looking out the glass window. Sunset bathed distant oil rigs where Elena once walked. The pump's creak was no longer a death knell, but a pulse of justice, slow, steady, unceasing. At Green Lawn Cemetery, Jane Doe number 47 Farad's small headstone was replaced. Now it read clearly, Elena Morales, 1954, 975. She was found. She was heard. She is home. Under Bakersfield's afternoon sun, fresh flowers lay on the grave, petals trembling in the breeze. Somewhere, in the near half-century silence, Case MP 75184 finally rested, closed by truth and the belief that no matter how long, justice always finds its way back. 3 months after the verdict, Kern County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit completed a case summary titled After Action Report, Case MP 75184, Morales, Elena. The 180-page file, pale gray cover, bore a red confidential divided by release to Doge, California stamp. On the opening line, Lieutenant Ruben Rivera wrote, "This case proves time cannot shield crime if evidence is preserved, and those seeking justice never quit." Exter. The report's first section outlined the reinvestigation process from reopening the file to the final verdict. Phase 1, Case Review, 2023. Selected unidentified Jane Doe cases, recovered mitochondrial DNA from stored bones. Phase 2, DNA Identification. Matched via GED match, confirmed familial link to Elena Morales. Hall. Phase 3. Forensic Reexamination. Reanalyzed TARP, rope, oil samples using GCMS and SEM. Phase 4. Personnel Linkage. Traced 1,975 police supply receipts, found Roy Benson's signature. Phase 5. Audio Recovery. Filtered radiotape signals, detected victim's distress cry. Phase 6. Physical Evidence and Prosecution. Searched suspect's home, found jacket with victim's hair, DNA matched. Each phase was illustrated with detailed flowcharts, arrows linking old evidence, vaults to modern labs, carbon paper ink to 21st century DNA sequencing printouts. Rivera noted in the margin, "Justice isn't just the outcome, it's the process. Each right step gives voice to the silenced." The next section focused on archival and evidence management failures over 40 years. A summary table listed. Asterisk. Case number 47 Farads had incorrect evidence, sealing dates. Asterisk. Missing signatures for evidence receipt. Asterisk. Evidence stored in nylon bags instead of moisture-proof containers, risking biological sample damage. Asterisk. No NamUs data entry for the first 25 years. Asterisk. No periodic review of unidentified case files. The report stated, if any single piece of evidence had been destroyed during archive purges, this case would remain unsolved forever. Archival process failures are a key reason justice was delayed nearly half a century. Rivera requested a policy addition, permanent storage of all unidentified case evidence, regardless of investigative time limits. The report's middle section described the successful reinvestigation, dubbed the Kern County Protocol, a new process combining modern forensics, genealogical tracing, and administrative review. It had 4 pillars. Asterisk. Re-examine. Reopen files. Digitize all data. Scan pages with OCR to prevent loss. Asterisk. Reconstruct. Rebuild case events using 3D data, audio, geographic maps, and shift logs. Asterisk. Relink. Connect evidence to personnel, financial, and supply records to find gaps. Asterisk. Reconfirm. Verify DNA and evidence with state databases, using multiple labs. This protocol solved the Morales case after nearly half a century. Rivera noted, forensics provide data, but connecting people, records, and technology revives dead cases. The report's final section proposed policy changes. The unit recommended the California DOJ establish a statewide cold case review program, periodic review of all unidentified remains cases statewide, with dedicated funding and staff. They also requested all county police agencies report evidence status every 5 years. Another proposal. An anonymous DNA storage fund to ensure old samples aren't destroyed due to preservation costs. When the report was released, the California Attorney General sent an official commendation, stating, "The Elena Morales case exemplifies the power of genealogical DNA and investigative persistence. The California DOJ will use this case as a standard training case for statewide forensic and cold case programs in 2025." A month later, Rivera was invited to speak at the California Forensic Symposium in Sacramento. On stage, he projected Elena Morales' new gravestone. "She was found, she was heard, she is home," and said, "We can't change the past, but we can keep it from being forgotten. Every neglected file is a person waiting to be named. If there's one DNA fragment, one note, one piece of evidence, there's a chance for justice." Post-symposium, the DOJ released the Cold Case DNA Manual, the Morales Model, detailing Kern County's process, from extracting old bone samples to recovering handwritten logs and tracing government supply chains. The cover quoted Rivera, "Justice has no expiration date." At year-end 2024, in a Bakersfield internal ceremony, the Cold Case Unit received a California governor's commendation. Rivera spoke briefly. "This isn't a police victory, it's a victory of persistence and respect for those lost." Behind him, a placard read, "Case MP 75184, Morales, Elena," beside laser-etched text. "Reopened. 2023. Resolved. 2024. Justice confirmed." As the hall lights dimmed, Rivera lingered, staring at the placard. He knew, though the file was closed, the Morales case would forever remind that sometimes a single hair, a single note, a single memory can turn the wheel of justice, even after nearly half a century stalled. In October 2024, less than 4 months after the California DOJ adopted the Morales Model as a statewide cold case training standard, Bakersfield Police Department held its largest internal meeting in history. In the 7th-floor hall, where portraits of past police chiefs hung, white ceiling lights illuminated a digital board reading, "Post. Morales Initiative Reform and Reassessment." In the front row, Lieutenant Ruben Rivera and the Cold Case Unit sat as honored guests. New Police Chief Harold Gutierrez took the podium, opening bluntly. The Morales case taught 2 lessons. One about technology's power, and one about the consequences of neglected processes. "We won't let another Elena Morales happen." He announced a comprehensive reform plan, including reviewing over 200 unsolved cases from 1,960 to 2,000. An interdisciplinary team, Cold Case Unit, Forensics, Records, and Digital Forensics, was formed to audit every piece of evidence, seals, chain of custody, and DNA extraction potential. "From now on," Gutierrez said, "no evidence bag sits forgotten without someone accountable." And Rivera presented a detailed plan. Each case file would be assigned a QR code, entered into the new digitized Evidence Track 3 storage system, allowing chain of custody information to be scanned and accessed in seconds. All 200 case files were divided into 3 groups: unidentified remains, bodies yet to be identified, unsolved homicides, murders without conclusions, missing persons over 25 years, long missing individuals with no leads. Stored evidence would be retested using genealogical DNA methods, with support from the California Department of Justice and Jane Doe project. An auxiliary lab was established in Bakersfield to process trace samples, bones, hair, fabric fibers, or touch cells with equipment capable of amplifying DNA from just micrograms of material. Local media dubbed it the Morales effect, a ripple effect from the case, forcing the county's law enforcement system to reflect. In the first 3 months, 47 old cases were reopened, 8 victims identified, 2 leading to prosecutions. One case made the Los Angeles Times front page. 1,979 hitchhiker identified via Morales protocol. Photos of the old archive rusted cabinets, faded nylon bags became symbols of a new era, one where data, not time, determined a case's fate. Reforms didn't stop at evidence. The police department issued a long-term evidence preservation protocol, stipulating All evidence tied to unidentified victims must be stored for at least 75 years. DNA potential evidence, preserved at -20 degrees Celsius with automated temperature monitoring. Electronic records backed up concurrently at 2 separate data centers to prevent loss. Annual reports on evidence status, submitted by the Records Division to the Sheriff's Office. Simultaneously, a mandatory training course, Cold Case Forensic Application, was added to new officer programs. Recruits learned to handle aged evidence, recognize genealogical DNA, and understand the ethical role in seeking justice for unidentified victims. The training slide opened with Elena Morales' gravestone. She was found. She was heard. She is home. Rivera, now promoted to captain, became a guest instructor. In the first session, he recounted finding the oilcloth in the old archive. It sat there nearly half a century, among dust and rust, but it unlocked the entire case. I want you to understand, your job doesn't end when a report is signed, but when justice is returned to the lost. The room was silent. Young recruits, yet to see field investigations, bowed heads, taking notes. The reform effect spread beyond Kern County. Police departments in Fresno, Ventura, and San Diego requested to adopt the Morales Protocol. The DOJ incorporated the case into an e-case simulation training system for statewide forensic trainees. Users could re-investigate the Morales case with real data, reviewing DNA reports, listening to radio tapes, cross-referencing evidence. The goal wasn't just technical skill but instilling responsibility. In Bakersfield, an Elena Morales Memorial Fund was established, supporting forensic science students and cold case researchers. The newly opened cold case building was named Morales Forensic Center, with a plaque at the entrance bearing Rivera's words, "Justice has no deadline." By late 2024, Bakersfield PD's internal report noted 203 cases reviewed, 63 DNA samples successfully extracted, unidentified victims named, 3 prior suspects additionally prosecuted. In an interview, Rivera was asked how he felt seeing an entire system change due to one case. He replied, "Elena Morales didn't just make us find justice, she made us find ourselves, the people who swore not to let truth be buried." On the last day of the year, standing before a board listing closed cases, Rivera saw the final entry, MP 75184. Closed divided by Morales, Elena, training reference case. He smiled, touching the cold metal board. Nearby, young officers passed, pausing to read. One whispered, "If she wasn't forgotten, no one else should be." Rivera nodded. Outside, Bakersfield's sun glared on oil rigs, reflecting off the Morales Forensic Center's glass walls where, from now on, every old case had a chance to have its voice heard again. In U.S. forensic history, few cases show investigative technology's progress like Elena Morales from a 1,975 typed carbon paper report to 2023 whole genome DNA sequencing. Nearly half a century, this case traces a perfect arc of transformation, from Bakersfield's yellow gas station lights to the cold blue glow of 21st century DNA labs. Between those poles lies a human journey. People who believe no case is truly closed if evidence remains. When Elena Morales vanished, Bakersfield police had only pens, typewriters, and black and white photos as evidence. They lacked DNA databases, modern chemical analysis, or strict sealing protocols. Evidence then was just oilcloth scraps, a rope segment, a vague forensic report. The case was labeled voluntary disappearance, an adult leaving town. No one suspected those ordinary items, preserved by a meticulous archive clerk, would become the links bringing justice back. When the cold case unit reopened the file in 2023, investigative technology was a different world. qPCR scanners could detect DNA from faint skin cells, genealogical tracing software could find relatives across states, audio restoration, isolated voices in 4-8-year-old analog tape noise. Forensics was no longer intuition but molecular precision. Yet more vital, the investigators Rivera, Shue, Keegan, Ward brought not just modern tools but a belief that truth doesn't die. The Morales case became a textbook example of merging manual and digital investigation. Handwritten notes, logs, and old film led to the starting point. DNA, microfiber analysis, and 3D modeling brought the finish line. Those two worlds, yellowed papers and digital screens, met in the middle. The old oilcloth, its dust peeled away by science and patience. When the California DOJ issued the Morales model, it recognized not just case-solving technology, but evidence preservation ethics. A seemingly useless item must be respected. It could be a victim's last voice. The chain of custody isn't just procedure, but a promise between police and citizens that evidence will be kept until justice is served. Rivera said at the Sacramento Symposium, "Time can erase footprints, but not DNA. If we preserve evidence, justice can survive generations." From a case thought forgotten, California's investigative system learned more. Interagency coordination, interdisciplinary science, and digitized record importance. Post-Morales, U.S. Police departments began updating archives, auditing old evidence, sending unidentified DNA to genealogical labs. A new generation of investigators grew up believing every old file is a potential open door, not a dead end. But the Morales case wasn't just a technical triumph. It was a silent indictment of an era's silence. Roy Benson was a symbol of authority, trusted by the town. No one questioned his no-incident log entry. That system's silence killed Elena again. Nearly 50 years later, as the trial ended, Rivera wrote in his investigation log, "Justice wasn't delayed just by lack of technology. It was delayed because we didn't dare believe a uniform could be wrong." Now, as Bakersfield's oil rigs creak in dry winds where Elena walked her final night, the town has changed. North of the city, the Morales Forensics Center lights up each evening, its glass reflecting sunset, where students and investigators learn to hear cold cases' voices. In the main hall hangs a steel plaque. Elena Morales, 1954, 1975, found 2023. Justice, 2024. No case ever truly closes when evidence still speaks. Each April, the month Elena's identity was confirmed, the cold case unit holds a small memorial. No fresh flowers or long speeches, just young officers standing silent for a minute before her gravestone, hearing desert wind whistle through distant oil fields, as if the past whispers, "I was heard." Rivera always stands at the back, saying nothing, just bowing his head. He once said, "None of us are heroes, we're just people keeping a promise to the lost." That promise changed a system. Post-Morales, all Bakersfield cold cases were reviewed. Nearly 70 unidentified victims were named. Dusty file cabinets now glow under lights. Old evidence bags stored in freezers, cataloged, cloud-backed. In training, the Morales timeline is a benchmark. Disappearance, 1,975. Body found, 1,977. Case cold, 1,980. 2020. DNA identified, 2023. Prosecuted, 2024. Each marker is a chapter in America learning to listen to science and conscience together. In the end, in Bakersfield's archive basement hallway, gray steel cabinets still stand as they did for half a century. But now, new locks, white LED lights, no more dust. In the fourth drawer from the left, where a small file number 47 farads once sat, a red metal plate reads, "Solved, 2024. Inside, the original file remains. Typed report, black and white scene photos, a note reading, "Oil residue, keep sealed." At the front, Rivera left a small paper, "Keep it, never destroy." From here, justice was found. Lights on the steel cabinet reflect the last patrolling figure leaving the room. The door closes, metal echoing softly in the empty hall. In the dimness, hundreds of files stand neatly, each a story untold. But among them, file number 47 farads, Morales, Elena rests with a red, "Solved 2024" stamp glowing. One small drawer, a half-century story, and a timeless lesson. Time may fade everything but truth. As long as evidence exists, justice has a chance to be heard. In today's America, where technology and civic trust intersect, Elena Morales' story reminds us that justice needs both science and community responsibility. A brown hair on an old service jacket, Chevron Type B oil on a tarp, Ford F-100 G2000, 541 tire marks, a radio tape with a sub-second, no, cry, and GED match genealogical links via DNA Doe project. Those tiny details changed a case frozen for nearly half a century. Practical lessons for us all. 1. Preserve and respect personal data. Medical records, documents, family photos, even voluntary DNA can aid identification, reunions, and rights later. Know your privacy rights, but consider responsible community contributions, like the Morales family's matching consent. 2. Documentation and transparency in work. Chain of custody isn't just for police. Any U.S. profession, healthcare, education, finance, logistics needs clear processes so truth isn't erased by time. 3. The someone else will handle it attitude is costly. In 1975, a scribbled assisted driver delayed justice 49 years. So, when you see something off in your neighborhood, workplace, or online, document, report through proper channels, and persist. 4. Don't idolize authority. Roy Benson showed symbols can betray trust. In America, accountability is foundational. Vote in local elections. Monitor public budgets. Support reforms like the Morales Protocol, long-term evidence preservation, cold case reviews, digital forensics. Ultimately, justice has no expiration. When we preserve evidence, keep processes transparent, and dare to speak up, truth finds its way back. If you believe justice never sleeps, and every forgotten story deserves retelling, subscribe to our channel to join us in uncovering truths behind America's cold cases. Thank you for following Elena Morales' case. See you in the next video, where another case will be reopened, and the past will speak again.